any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you.
Larry Snelling, the Chicago police superintendent, back in October when there was an incident of a federal law enforcement officer defending themselves in vehicles ramming into others and such. It is something that obviously is now resurfaced with Minnesota and what happened last week, and we're talking about it here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, editor at the Center Square for Illinois and host of the Center Square's Illinois in Focus, and you can wake up with us each and every weekday morning. So obviously a lot of attention on what happened in Minnesota last week and calls for Kristi Noem to step down or to be removed. Here is Delia Ramirez, Congresswoman from Chicago, talking with MS Now, and she posted this on X over the weekend.
Look, Kristi Noem is so incompetent, she doesn't even know what her standard operating procedures are. She would know that ICE currently doesn't have an excessive force policy. I'll be introducing legislation in the coming weeks to be able to make sure we actually have it. But the point is that she lies. DHS kills and then they lie about it. They don't even wait for a thorough investigation before calling a victim a domestic terrorist so that they can get away with it. We have to stop her.
So Ramirez talking about that while Governor J.B. Pritzker was on CNN over the weekend, also discussing this issue, elevating it into the national political conversation.
Process. That's not something that the Trump administration believes in. And indeed, they are throwing people out of the country. They're arresting U.S. citizens and people who are here legally without any due process. And in many cases, they're claiming that they're domestic terrorists, claiming that they're doing something wrong when there's zero evidence on their side. Let me just say, though, that when you have video, as you do in Minneapolis, when you have eyewitness testimony from people, it seems like there's a whole lot of evidence.
So Pritzker talking about the evidence that he's seen, DHS releasing their own evidence, and here's a video that DHS released over the weekend as well, seeming to, as the Trump administration puts it, debunk the mainstream accounts of all of this.
I'm Lauren Biss, Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security. I'm here to set the record straight on false reporting surrounding our brave law enforcement. Following the attack in Minneapolis, the media and sanctuary politicians began spreading smears about our law enforcement, from claiming the rioter was driving away from law enforcement to garbage that she was denied medical care. Here's what really happened. ICE officers in Minneapolis were conducting targeted operations when rioters began blocking ICE officers, and one of these violent rioters weaponized her vehicle, attempting to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them. An ICE officer, fearing for his life, the lives of his fellow law enforcement, and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training and saved his own life and that of his fellow officers. This footage corroborates what DHS has stated all along, that this individual was impeding law enforcement and weaponized her vehicle in an attempt to kill or cause bodily harm to federal law enforcement.
Again, that's the DHS narrative they're putting out on their social media in the wave of a lot of the big corporate cable news channels saying that, laying out the headlines that they just laid out there. Obviously, you could hang up any picture and people are going to have different interpretations of it. And we're clearly seeing that, and especially in an election year, how that's being used in the political conversation. So you've got, President Donald Trump last night. He was on Air Force One heading back to Washington, D.C., and he was asked about this. And he says, listen, these agitators were over the top, and he's curious if they were paid to be there.
I think, frankly, they're professional agitators. And I'd like to find out, and we are going to find out, who's paying for it. With their brand new signs and all the different things. But that woman and what her friend and what their other friends were doing to law enforcement, not just ICE, law enforcement is outrageous.
So Trump, again, he talked about how he sees some of the video, and it looks like these individuals are there antagonizing and tracking down even and following them around. This was something that happened in Chicago not too long ago, back in October. Operation Midway Blitz announced, and you had people with whistles getting around armed federal law enforcement on the streets conducting immigration enforcement. And while some may characterize it as there's no due process, I mean, these individuals they're going after have court orders to be detained and ultimately lead to deportation. ICE obviously is conducting street actions in areas considered sanctuary states because local law enforcement's not cooperating and keeping non-citizens arrested for other crimes in jail to let ICE know, hey, pick this person up. It's a non-citizen. Illinois police can't even ask suspects what their immigration status is because of laws in the state of Illinois. So that's why they're conducting these operations on the streets, according to the Trump administration. But back in October, Larry Snelling, the Chicago police chief, he addressed this issue, was pretty emphatic, talking to the public who are upset about immigration enforcement, but saying that you can't just take the law into your own hands.
So let me be clear to the public about certain things. You have to excuse me, I'm a little dehydrated. Let me make this clear. Federal agents, ICE, HSI, are officers. They are agents of law enforcement. If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation. And it's reasonable for them to use force based on those conditions. Do not box in any law enforcement officer. You are breaking the law when you do that. And you are putting yourself in danger. Following law enforcement agents around. The question is why? What do you plan on doing? It's also reasonable for them to believe that you're eventually going to do harm to them. If you ram any vehicle, especially that one that contains law enforcement agents, and that's any law enforcement, local, state, federal, county, and you do this intentionally, this is considered deadly force. Deadly force is anything that can cause great bodily harm or death. When you plow into a vehicle that contains law enforcement agents, you're using deadly force. And they can use deadly force in response to stop you. We need to be clear about these laws. We cannot become a society where we just decide to take everything in our own hands and start to commit crimes against law enforcement.
Again, that's Larry Snelling back in October, Chicago police superintendent. Rewind back to just last night, President Donald Trump asked about immunity and in particular what that means to him for law enforcement like this officer in Minnesota or elsewhere, quite frankly.
When it comes to ICE officials, though, Mr. President, well, just to clarify on the absolute immunity, do you believe ICE officers should have absolute immunity?
No, generally speaking, I mean, these people have been harassed and threatened every day. They had bands out playing so they couldn't sleep at the hotel. I see what they're doing to them. They're threatening them constantly. And all they're doing is doing what I got elected on.
And again, enforcing federal law, which is something the Trump administration said time and again, federal law is what they're enforcing when it comes to immigration. And there is due process, the Trump administration says, with these detention orders and such. Even Vice President J.D. Vance last week, as we shared with you, talked about how if you want to change the law, don't go impede law enforcement enforcing the law. Get to the ballot box and do it that way. We'll see how this continues to evolve and develop we're in an election year and how the politics of this is playing out. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us each and every weekday morning for the latest here with the Center Square.